So Dan, you wanted to talk about video games, right?
Who?
Oh shit! I do this all the time. Rob, who is with us today?
This is our dear gaming friend Shane Bettenhausen.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. It's been a while. We talked about you. Like, people probably won't believe you're here because we've shown pictures of us with you, and they're like, surely he is photoshopped in.
I come back to Kentucky once every year for Video Game Armageddon.
Video Game Armageddon!
Which is a giant gaming party that Rob hosts,
Yep.
and this year I'm here, so it's even more exciting.
Awesome. What are we talking about today, Rob?
So I'm thinking, since we have Shane here, Shane's officially in the industry. I am officially in the industry. I figured we could talk about, like, industry stuff, like maybe how we became industry gaming people officially.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
It is a question that people often ask, and like, you know, because it seems impossible. Like, when I was a kid growing up in Kentucky, I often tell the story, like, I think around the time I beat Super Mario Brothers 3, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool to work on games like this? And my mom is like, that's not a job that you can have.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something people do here.
She was supportive of you.
No, she was like, that's not a job. You need to have a real job.
And my parents were
You can't
something were
work
similar
at
to.
Babbage's all the time.
Well,
and
what should work at
then it
Babbage?
was like, oh, well, as we got at 16, I was like, man, there is a place that has video games in the mall. Wouldn't it be cool if I could sell video games? And they're like, well, you have to be 18 to work here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's
Really,
real.
really? No, I worked at Babbage as a 16.
And I was jealous, but at EB Games, Waldensoftware,
Software at the time.
at the time, you had to be 18. So I worked at Best Buy first. And
Moving on up.
and finally, I got to work there at Waldensoftware, which is our version of Electronics Boutique. And Rob was already ensconced at the enemy gaming store,
Babbage's.
Nothing but bad bitches in here tonight. Bad bitches only.
America's Computer Software Quarters.
You know, the
At least it wasn't CompUSA.
I love Miss Company
It was
too.
a CompUSA.
Yeah, I had a friend.
And that's where I met these two fools.
Yes,
when they were
you were
both like,
you spent a lot of money.
I did. I would spend a lot of money, but I would be like, "Hey, Rob, Shane said he could get this for me for $20."
I was like, forget Shane. I'll match it for 18.
I would play you two like mom and dad. So like,
Well,
hey,
and I'll say that was peak game retail too, because like the internet was still kind of in its infancy. You know, this was
1996, 97.
Yeah, like there was like
Yeah.
Netscape and
Yeah, we were on, we were on Usenet and we
Yeah.
were on IRC or something.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a place where you could go and like see all the release dates for games coming out.
No,
So
we
like
couldn't
every
order
day,
games. Yeah.
the phone would ring off the hook and people, hey, when's the new WWE coming out or whatever?
Hold on. Let me
No,
back.
WWF, I think it was back then.
That's true.
You had to
WCW.
have your subscription to like Nintendo Power to see like what's coming out soon.
Keep in mind, Nintendo Power is strictly advertisement only.
Only
Right.
Nintendo.
Well, we had to print out a big binder, a 3-ring binder of like release dates were all wrong in there, and you would put your name down on a piece of paper.
I remember.
Do you remember
I'm like,
those?
when is Secret of Mana 2 coming out?
That's not a
Never.
thing.
It's to be announced.
Well, and then you of all people were happy to get Secret of Evermore because you were confused.
That game
I
is
love that
terrible.
game. Terrible.
Okay, it's not terrible, but like we could do better. So
Yeah, we're working through game retail through college.
So how I met Shane, and it's interesting. When I was at Babbage's, I was thinking that I was the only person like me who was super into games, super into Japanese games. Like, I've been playing games since I was.
How very hipster of you.
Well, okay, and say
Have you seen his hats?
no, but also, you know, in 2018, the idea of importing games seems kind of normal. But back then,
it was not.
Back then, it was the three of
It was not a
us
thing.
importing games.
So
Yeah.
here I am. I think I was 18 or something years old, and Dracula X Rondo of Blood was a thing for the
Yes.
TurboGrafx CD, the Japanese version. And again, you still can get on the internet and order these things. Like we had to get in the back
maybe
of
the back page of Game Fan.
Yeah, Game Fan,
Die Hard
Die Hard Game Fan.
Oh my God, those phone numbers
you
I would
hear
call.
some weird
And you're like-
random rumor about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the price was like, you know, $149.
Yes. So I was like, it's like.
Because of the extra RAM.
And I had like the TurboGrafx like magazine, and it had like that, and Tengai Makio 2 and some other things. Like, Mom, I want to get Dracula X for my birthday. So I go through the pains of ordering from like Japan video game, order this thing, and I'm playing this. I'm like, okay, I'm the only person who is nerdy and goofy enough to have something like this. Then I went to Waldensoftware and I met Shane, and Shane had like the soundtrack or something to this game. I'm like, who is this guy that is nerdy as me?
And didn't we organize like a exchange?
Yes.
I lent you some of my nerdy shit, and then you gave me some of yours. You gave me Manjimaru.
Yeah,
we did like
we did
like a friend nerd game exchange.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, me and Rob are on the same wavelength about this
Yeah,
stuff.
we're rivals in the store, but like we were in sync.
Yeah.
And I actually told the story very recently of Symphony of the Night just came out again on the PlayStation 4, right?
So it's Castlevania Rebirth. It's both Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, playable natively on PlayStation 4. store with amazing trophies. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. Everyone should go buy the best $20 that you can spend.
Oh, and if you play with DualShock 4, the sound effects come out of the speaker and run
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing.
So Shane tells me, hey, I got something tonight for the Japanese version of Japanese PlayStation. Go over to his house in Nicholasville, which is ironic because that's where I am now. Go to Nicholasville and I play this game, and like the first time, if you've ever played the game, it starts out with like no music, just sound effects and stuff, and then that music kicks in and the castle lights up, and it was like, like it came over me like the creepy Dracula blow. It was the most amazing experience I had at the time. I was like, okay, Shane and I are friends forever, and I went and bought the Japanese version like the next day. So that is
Our
how
friendship was like cemented by Castlevania, which is a good thing.
That's amazing.
That's
I
really the
love
best
that.
way.
Yeah, because I actually went to EB Games when I was little and got Symphony of the Night. And then my little story with that would be my brother's friend stole it, and then I went on a big, huge journey to find it when it was like $100.
Yes, it's
And I
called-
still bought it.
Yeah, it was hard to get for a while. Even the greatest hits version was going for like
I was
$100.
snooty and got the Sega Saturn Japanese.
we got
Symphony
the
of the Night,
we got the Saturn
which is
version.
interesting.
Yeah, it was good.
I remember talking to both of you, like coming to the store and be like, "Have you guys played the Symphony of the Night on the Sega Saturn?"
Yeah,
and of course by then
we sold
Shane
it.
already knew.
Right.
But at that point, I think EB Games and
We were
I'm sorry,
we were selling.
you
Saturn
were starting to
import
sell
games.
Sega Saturn.
Yeah, we
games.
had been selling like the Japanese.
It was still a little more than other places. Like
Yeah.
not, I don't want to say online. The places that you would
I think we charged like 80 or 90 for those.
Yeah,
Well, I
I think it was Radiant Silvergun. I remember selling it. things like
Marble.
that.
I remember Marble Superheroes versus Street Fighter, things like that, because it came with the 4 megabyte
Megabit. Yeah.
Wow.
Although I'll say the Sega Saturn version of Nocturne, Symphony of the Night, while interesting and has some unique content, it is not a good version of the game. The transparencies aren't good. The fact that you have to like load the map screen separately, it's
Yeah, the
not
resolution
so
was
great.
off, but like it had amazing music. You play as Maria, which is different than the Maria that you currently play.
PSP
Yeah.
version.
And both Maria playthroughs are incredibly hard. Like if you try the new Maria playthrough, it is
not
very
happening
hard.
yet, but
Is that because
Much like Rick-
life is harder for women? Is that what?
Well, no, it's
Life is
no, they changed
always
the mechanics.
harder
It's super
for
hard to
us.
play as Richter too because you don't get items and power up. Anyway, like
It's not the son of Dracula. Of course, it's harder to play.
You know,
So anyway,
but we
you know,
digress.
Okay, sorry.
So-
We digress. So we worked at these stores together. We should talk about the Dreamcast. We'll talk about that later because that was a fun time.
Dreamcast launch?
The Dreamcast launch. We should talk about that a little later.
it could be its own episode.
Yeah. So then Shane calls me. He goes, "Hey, dude, I'm leaving. I'm leaving for California."
I remember how sad we all.
Well, I mean, you kind of just fast forwarded. Like
Okay, let's bring it back.
I was going to the University of Kentucky, majoring in English with the idea of not having a job, having my liberal arts degree.
English, yeah.
So I graduate, and what am I gonna do? And like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do. I guess I'll be, I can be a manager at the game store. I could. It's not the worst. It's a fine job to have.
Yeah, we were both
It's a
like
job,
assistants
yeah.
at the time.
But I felt the call to do something else, like because I had friends who had met on like the IRC and Usenet who were like in who were like, video game journalists. There's some people who worked for like EGM and people I looked up to. I've been reading these magazines for a long time, and I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna start applying for every game job I see, even things I'm totally not qualified for.
As you should.
Like
As you should.
everything. I just like literally was like just sending in applications, and I had no resume. Like I worked at games, I worked GameStop. That's it, right? And I eventually sent in some writing samples to Future Publishing, the guys who were doing like Next Generation magazine.
Yeah.
They did
I love
official-
Next.
love
Next
Next
was one of my
official
favorites.
Dreamcast magazine. And one day I'm working at EB, and the phone rings, and it's Chris Charla, who was the EIC of Next Generation. He liked my Resident Evil Code Veronica review that I'd written, and he wanted to fly me out to California to interview for this magazine they were going to start. And like my whole world was like, in what? It just blew my mind,
Yeah.
right?
I remember when I ran into you and you were like, "Man, I'm going for an interview
Yeah.
in California," and I'm like, "Whatever.
And
I'll
so-
see you next week, Shane, at the arcade."
And I remember I flew out to their office, and like PlayStation 3 had just come out in Japan like the day before I got there, and they were all playing a brand new PlayStation 3 there at the office, and they were playing Street Fighter EX3, which is not a good game.
No.
And I was like, oh, that doesn't look very good. And it scared me about PS3. I was like, oh. But went through the interview process, and ironically, we were talking about Castlevania. It was multiple people to interview with, and the last guy who was like the publisher, I didn't understand that's like a high up guy.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the interview, I'm like, I brought up like, I didn't like the Next Generation gave Castlevania Symphony of the Night 3 stars because it was 2D. I probably shouldn't have said
You maybe
that.
should have said that.
But I did bring that up in my interview.
Wow.
So,
Well, I didn't get that job.
but it's also very interesting that Chris Charla is like one of the cornerstones to this because I have met Chris Charla.
And now, all these years later, Chris Charlotte works at ID at Xbox. He's an amazing dude. I really look up to him. And I often remind him, hey, had he not flown me out there to California, I might not be here, because I actually parlayed that interview into getting another interview at another place. I was like, well, I just interviewed with Future, because a friend of mine was interviewing for this thing called Gamers.com. This was like .com bubble 2000. It was a new gaming website. It eventually became One Up many years later.
Okay.
But I did get that job, and I moved to California, said goodbye to all my friends here, and set out for a grand adventure as a games journalist, where I eventually, I started at Gamers.com, went to One Up went away, I freelanced for a year, and then I got hired full-time at EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly, a magazine I'd been reading since I was a little kid.
Yeah, I have issue number 2. Don't have issue number 1, I have issue number 2.
And I got to work with like luminaries like Dan Shu and Mark McDonald, John Riccardi, people who I grew up reading. Now they're my good friends, but and I got to be in gaming journalism when it was still very pure. Like EGM refused to take bribes. We wouldn't accept travel. We wouldn't accept gifts. We would often get like blacklisted by companies for
pay for your own games.
We had to pay for our own games. We get blacklisted by companies for giving bad reviews. If we gave a game a bad review, they would say, you don't get any games, you don't get invited to events.
Yep.
I couldn't imagine like Activision doing anything like that.
Won't you Google that? Google that and tell me.
And that time spent at One Up EGM was spectacular, because I got to kind of experience the tail end of print magazine publication. And
It's so sad that it's gone.
It is.
It's so sad.
And I was there for like the nascent, arrival of podcasts and video shows. Like, I'm really proud of the work we did on the One Up show and One Up Yours podcast.
Podcast is great. Still great. And but you guys just drinking and cursing and talking about video games. Well, that's kind of what we do anyway.
Well, yeah, and I've had to apologize, like, did we help kind of poison the well for just like 4 drunk dudes talking garbage? So I'm glad that isn't what this is. You have different perspectives here and you're not drunk. So
we have Tina.
I mean, I'm sober.
Tina's drunk.
And Maddie. We're not drunk all the time.
Yeah,
I wasn't just eating beer and cereal.
Yeah, that's true.
But we had a little bourbon too. But so that was me and the gaming press side, which was a full 10 years all told. I mean, it was a big adventure, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
And throughout all that, like, you and I still kept in contact. Right. Anytime you came into town, like, we would host, we would do Video Game Armageddon, we make sure. I've actually been to Japan with John Ricciardi, Mark McDonald, all of these guys. We vacationed together. Yeah. We've gone. I still talk.
Remember that crazy 13-person trip I organized where you and Fran first came? I was like, wouldn't it be fun to bring 13 people to Japan? I was insane.
That's a terrible idea, but it was a great idea. That was a trip that I met these guys, and I've seen them at EGM, and I thought they were pretty
doing karaoke with Igarashi
and the chick who did the soundtrack to Castlevania. I think that's all the soundtrack to Castlevania.
Yeah, Michiru Yamane was there.
She signed like my iPod's like, your music's on my iPod. Yeah, so like
that all happened.
Yeah.
And I got to go to Japan, I got to Europe, I got to meet all these luminaries. I had a great experience as a journalist. But after a long time of being a games journalist, I decided I wanted to go see what they call the dark side, which is, game development, publishing. And I took a risky move, and I moved to a small, weird, upstart game publisher called Ignition.
I remember this.
Rest in peace, Ignition.
You translated one of the best YouTube videos ever, which Ignition is known for. Is it Arc Rise?
Fantasia.
With a voice actor?
We were watching that. We were watching that video very recently.
Do you ever watch your stuff?
Do you know that game is worth a lot of money now? I wish I would have kept a lot of
you had
a lot of the bad games now are worth ridiculous amount of money because nobody bought them or they tossed them away.
What were you doing at Ignition?
Well, I was business development director, so I was helping design games, and we did things like Muramasa, which is a fantastic game.
Love that game. Beautiful.
The reasons I went there were for Dragon's Crown, which we ended up getting published by Atlas, but we were working on that while I was there.
Dragon's Crown.
And
won't you bring up your Dragon's Crown
Have you seen the Amazons?
The Amazon.
Oh man, okay, getting to meet George Kamatani, the dude who makes games and
does he look like a guy that draws women?
He's amazing. He's an amazing person.
Does all the character
His office is full of like Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo.
That
makes sense. Right?
That's amazing.
And he literally paints all the stuff. He paints the art. It's him.
Wow, really? I didn't know.
That's so cool.
That makes sense, though.
That's why the game took 10 years.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Every frame is every worth. Every time when Dragon Crown Pro came out, I bought the crap out of it. Yep.
The other game I went to work there was El Shaddai. Really crazy, interesting.
I remember him trying to sell us on El Shaddai. We're like, you made that title.
I pimped El Shaddai real hard, but I still believe in it. I think it's a really cool game.
And
no, because it's the whole title. Say the whole title.
El Shaddai: Ascension of the Metatron. And now
you made that.
Now all the Undertale kids, your daughter, she knows the Metatron.
Yes, she does.
And remember, you were this. So again, I keep up with you as all this is going on. We go to E3 a couple times. Right. Like I was your official correspondent at E3 that particular one, and you had, I don't know if you bought them or you secured them, the El Shaddai pants.
Yes.
The $800 pants.
I own, yeah. In Japan, there were all these crazy tie-ups with, like, jeans and all sorts of weird stuff. The Ignition was 2 wild and wacky years of insanity for lots of reasons that I won't go into here. But I learned a lot. I learned a tremendous amount about how games actually get produced and published and what not to do, some things what to do. And I was lucky after 2 years in getting El Shaddai out the door, getting Dragon's Crown firmly placed with Atlas. A position opened up at PlayStation, and I had some friends that worked there, and I was like, that seems like the holy grail to me. Because like I'd seen editorial, I'd seen publishing, but I hadn't seen platform holder, right? Mm-hmm. And this was the tail end of PS3. Vita had been announced for Japan, but wasn't out yet in America, and PS4 had not been announced. So,
and you also forgot you were like the biggest Sony fanboy in the entire universe, so it kind of makes sense.
I mean, that was a perception of me on 1UP that we kind of played up a bit. Both like Luke Smith and I, we decided, and Garnet, we all kind of decided to turn it up to 11. We're like, it makes a little better radio sometimes if.
I am definitely a Nintendo.
You have someone who's a pro and who's an anti.
And 2 bottles of bourbon later, it's it gets turned up to like 20, right? But I always respected PlayStation.
Of course.
You remember like back in the day, PlayStation 1. I was a Saturn guy.
Yeah.
I was not.
I remember him and I being the Saturn guys.
I was not
2 guys that bought those games.
Saturn was it was the better of the 2 systems.
For
2D.
It came out first.
Yeah,
Then this tiny little fucking game called Final Fantasy motherfucking 7 came out.
What's the
And it was game over. And it was game over.
About this?
It's funny. I didn't think I was going to buy PlayStation 1 at launch, but then like Ridge Racer, Toshinden. The combination of these games, even though they weren't individually great, it all kind of added up to like, all right, I guess I'll buy this thing.
I was not that way at all, because like I was a Ridge Racer guy in the arcade, and like that was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to PlayStation a week before day one. So
yeah, it really
not
was
like I'm playing my Daytona 500, fools.
That was great. It was great.
But it was a great game.
I had to go to PlayStation because of Wild Arms and Lunar.
Everybody did.
Oh
Most people are like, "What's a
I
Saturn?"
applaud you for your appropriate Working Design's pronunciation of Lunar.
Oh no!
It's Lunar.
I was
Lunar.
No,
it's Lunar.
It is Lunar. Because I'm Victor Ireland's account manager now, and when I call it Lunar, he's like, "Thank you for pronouncing it correctly."
Lunar Silver Story was like one of my favorite PS1 games. Besides Castlevania.
It was one of my favorite
Sega CD games.
And then when it got announced on the Sega Saturn, I'm like, yes, we're getting a Sega Saturn version. Oh my god, I'm so excited.
Come out here.
And it never came out here.
It came out for PS1.
Because Victor was smart and was like, yeah, sorry, Saturn, we're out. We're gonna go with Sony. And that was a smart move. Because Magic Knight Ray Earth, they sold like 50 copies. Me, Tina, you, and Rob bought one.
I can't buy my freaking disc. I am so mad.
That's also worth money now.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of money.
And there's 3 discs. Who did you have?
I had Hikaru.
Umi.
I have Umi.
And I have Hikaru.
I'm all about Fu.
So anyway, you get back on. So you're officially now at Sony as a platform holder.
Yes, that was 7 years ago that I started at PlayStation, and it was immediately, the great and secret show kind of revealed to me of like how it all happens, right? And it was exciting, and I was excited about Vita. Like I was like, oh man, this thing's great. And the team that I work on, developer relations and third-party relations, it was cool because like independent developers, and this was kind of the beginning of the indie renaissance, like tools like Unity and GameMaker were just starting to become available, where like people who might not have been able to make a game previously because they didn't know assembly or whatever could make a game using some middleware that did some of the heavy lifting for them. So we were able to onboard tons of new talent to make games for Vita. And that just made me really happy because I got to instantly see the success that these small teams were having. Oh, I have a good idea. I can loan you a development kit. I can give you Unity. And suddenly there's a game. And like I think if you look back to the life of Vita, there are some cool big games made by big publishers, but a lot of the content on there is actually indie content.
You could argue that the Vita was the first thing where indie games became super popular with the Vita platform. Before Switch, before whatever, like Vita was the platform to do that. And also we have to state how important, like my brother, he's a game creator, but he is not a programmer. We'll talk about me and
he started using RPG Maker. That's where he got his beginning.
So he started using these engines like RPG Maker to make game content because he's not like a computer person necessarily like I was, but he's a more creative content type person. Right. And these tools let anyone
you don't have to learn the code.
Yeah, you don't have to learn the code, which is what was the path that I wanted to go down.
So you were still at Sony,
right?
And Rob, Where are you now?
So I'm at Gun Media, and this is everything. It all goes in a full circle. So my story is not quite as epic as Shane's, but just to give you a brief highlight of what had happened was, I've always been a gamer, worked in retail at Babbage's, and when Shane got into journalism, there's a couple of times like, Rob, we need a tech article on like TVs, or we need pick screenshots or something random. Like, so I'll always provide that. So technically, I have like IGN and like pay stubs from like, stuff when you were back in the editorial days. But I went a different route. I went like development at Enterprise Software Company at IBM. So I was there for years and years, but I always kept up with gamers, with Shane, with John, with Mark, with any. And like,
you were always on the bleeding edge. You knew everything that was happening.
I knew all the games, even though I wasn't like technically in the industry. IBM, because they made the PowerPC processor, I was able to get into E3 several times because you just need to have proof. So I was always there.
You're meeting Miyamoto,
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. I met Miyamoto, I met all these guys, I met Kojima. I have pictures of me going, don't worry, got to gozaimasu to these guys. The happiest moment in my life was when
we know
children, marriage, Singer Miyamoto.
So
well, Shane helped
mine too. I had a similar experience.
Yeah,
actually.
Shane helped.
My Miyamoto was very
similar story.
Yeah.
So that's going on this path, but I always keep up with games. And as you were talking about with Unity and Unreal, it's like, okay, I want to try. Like, I now have a tool where, yes, I know how to program, I know how to develop, but I have something that can streamline that. I should start trying to make my own content. So I'm playing with these tools and things like that. IBM has a shift on how they do like business and things like that. I'm like, I should probably try and find something else to do.
I remember you kind of gave me a warning. Like you felt something in the air.
I felt a disturbance
in the force. Yeah.
I was like, Shane, what's going on, man?
And I'm like, well, this is your chance, man.
This is a chance. And I was like, I'll still stick with Enterprise Software. But just on a whim, our mutual friend, Ronnie Hobbs, who lived with you.
He was a roommate of mine in college.
And he worked at Waldensoftware. And I've always kept up with Ronnie.
And I knew he was at Gun because I managed Gun at PlayStation.
Yeah, and I didn't realize any of this at the time. I was like, I knew Ronnie did video games, but I didn't know specifically what he did. So, I read up a little bit on what's going on. He was doing Friday the 13th game. He's a co-creator. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Ronnie will definitely know, if I should be pursuing Unreal, or I should be pursuing Unity, or Game Maker, or whatever I should be doing. So we go have lunch. I have his number. We have lunch, and he's like, "Man, forget all that. You should come join with us." Because I was
before you even talked to him, I was like, "You should." I think I put that idea. I was like, "Yeah, there's a new successful video game developer publisher in your town."
And I was like, "What? Really?"
And there aren't too many of those in Kentucky.
Yeah, it was like this blew my mind. I was like, but I'm also one of these people where, because I've been in Enterprise Software so long, I really want to be safe. Enterprise Software is
you have
safe.
A family too.
And
it's a lot different than when you're in your 20s and you're like, I'm flying to California and going writing articles for some video game magazine, right?
And so I always applauded you for just taking the ball.
Oh, absolutely. You didn't get hit by the Kentucky curse. You stayed gone.
Yeah.
Usually Kentucky curse kicks in about 5 years and you're forced to find your way back.
Yeah.
Grandfather's dying and he's leaving you some land. Oh man.
I got wife and kids already. I can't pull these
as a black man, that's not an option for me. So I talked to Shane, talked to my brother, you know what? Maybe this is something that I can actually do. And that's exactly what happened. So now I'm officially in the industry. Now, as I said, I've met a lot of these people, these famous, Kojimas and Miyamotos and things like that anyway. So my first year at Gun was one of these things where it's the most amazing experiences of these things. So now everything goes back full circle. I'm now working with Shane, he's literally the person I'm talking to, handling stuff. I'm talking to people at Nintendo. I'm talking to people at Xbox. Chris Charla, I'm talking to him. And Chris, I'm like, yeah, Shane Bettenhausen, don't you? She was know him. So he and I are da-da-da-da-da-da. It's fantastic.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I think back to IRC, Internet Relay Chat for the kids. An old text-based chat on the internet.
On a yellow screen, a yellow terminal, not a computer, a terminal.
There was a channel that I was in, and people who are in this channel often think, if you look back at a screen grab of the people in that channel in the year 1997, at least half of them have jobs of some import in the video game industry in all sorts of different facets, right? Development, publishing, PR, you name it. If you, and that's the thing, if you really want it, I've often told this people, if you really want to work in the games industry, and it's gotten easier because there's more paths in than ever before, you just really have to find that way in.
Oh, wait, that's a good topic, which we should talk about next time.